Hey everyone, I'm Kelly Lloyd, the shorts programmer at Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival. Welcome to this Q&A session for the shorts program Side by Side. I'm super excited to introduce our moderator for today's session, Angela Sun, who will be chatting with our talented guests from the films in this program. Angela Sun is a mad, fat, first-generation Cellar theater performer, creator, producer, arts administrator, and writer of Chinese descent. This past year, she was also an integral member of our programming committee for this festival. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the Taipei Cultural Center of Taiwan Economic and Cultural Office in New York and Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in Toronto for their support in presenting this Q&A session. The participation of the filmmakers and talent was made possible with support from the CBC. During this session, feel free to drop your questions for the films just in the type of question box above the chat bar. If you're viewing off of your phone, you just need to scroll below this video to do the same thing. You can also join in on the ongoing discussions on our ever-growing Real Asian Film Forum Discord server. Once you enter the server, there is a welcome code of conduct message that you must read through and then consent to by clicking on the green checkmark icon to unlock the other threads. Finally, Real Asian strives to create a safe and accessible online space for folks to gather. Our festival code of conduct can be found on our website at realasian.com/code of conduct. And we encourage you to read it and give it your support. And now I can't be happier to pass off the mic to Angela because I will just be crying backstage right now. So please, everyone, let's welcome Angela on stage.
One of those going digital things you have to remember is to always unmute. Hi, everybody. My name is Angela Sun. I want to acknowledge that I'm currently sitting on Treaty 13 territory, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, and most recently and currently, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. I am so honored to be able to speak to the filmmakers of these shorts today. I've seen some of these films from the very beginning and am a huge fan of every single film in the Side by Side program. So first we will be speaking to the filmmaker of The Way We Are, Amanda Ann Min Wong. And it's an incredible short film about queer Asian histories. And I am so ecstatic to be speaking with you today, Amanda. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So let's just dive right in because we don't have a lot of time and there's just so much to talk about. And so the first question I have is that when I was sort of looking into the film after I'd watched it, I heard that it was a part of Invisible Footprints, which is a program that is created for young, I think, Asian artists to look into multi-generational South Asian and Asian movements, specifically LGBTQ plus movements, as well as histories. And I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the program and how that sort of inspired, the beginnings of what the short film is today.
Yeah, so, well, I was really lucky, first of all, to be a part of this program. I applied, I guess you have to apply with a kind of like an idea and a project, and then I think it took place over 6 months, and so it includes some workshops. We learned a lot about archiving. We met all each other, sort of fellow queer East Asian and Southeast Asian artists. We met with, I guess they would call them elders in the community, but young at heart. So, and but also with the wisdom that comes with age, and it's just like to learn so much from them was really awesome. and like I learned about archival practices, like sort of like the ethics of how to even, you know, go about this sort of work, and then part of the end of it is that it culminates with a like a final film project. So, and The Way We Are was what came out from it. So was really lucky to be a part of that. Invisible Footprints, if anybody wants to look it up, you can find it on Instagram as well.
And it was, I think, the third iteration of the program, because I saw that it was Invisible Footprints like 0.3 or 3.0.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I've been so involved in, like, not so involved, but somehow each iteration of Invisible Footprints has impacted my life.
Wow.
The first version of Invisible Footprints, that's how, like, I'm in a queer East Asian alt rock band, and
Amazing.
this is our t-shirt. You can follow us. Anyways, but like the first Invisible Footprints, that's how our band came together, and then the second Invisible Footprints, a friend of mine had an installation of a giant durian there, which inspired our first single. And then this third iteration of Invisible Footprints was what came out, you know, The Way We Are came out of it. So I just feel like these kinds of projects are so important in Toronto, and I'm very, very lucky to have it be a part of my life.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you met the elders who ended up in the film, and how you sort of cultivated that relationship, and how it was determined, who was in that film, and
Yeah. So there are four women in the film. Tamai Kobayashi, Wenda Lee, Nancy Sito, and Catherine Chun. Tamai, I actually knew her before I was in the Invisible Footprints program, because she is also a writer and a filmmaker, and she wrote a play and was looking for someone to act in it, and I acted in this play with her, and that's how we became friends. And so I asked her if she wanted to be a part of this project. And then Wenda, actually, let's start with, so Nancy and Catherine are were both elders as part of the Invisible Footprints. They, were there at some workshops, and we could like ask them questions and advice and things like that. And so they both agreed to be a part of this project. And then Nancy actually called Wenda, asking her if she would be available to do this, if she would be interested. But the interesting thing is that they hadn't seen each other in 30 years. So I think she looked up Wenda online, found her workplace, and left a voicemail on her work phone. And then that's how Wenda came to be a part of this project. And I met Wenda just that we went to go get momos, and it was like, we were talking about all the experiences that happened back in the day, that Nancy and Wenda and Tamai knew each other back in the day, back in 1989, when Asians Lesbians of Toronto was, that's how they met. And it was just so amazing because they hadn't seen each other in 30 years. So this was also a sort of form of, like, reconnecting and rediscovery of, that sort of past for them as well.
So your film literally, created those reconnections. How amazing is that?
I wouldn't say that my film did. I would say that Nancy did all the work, but I was very lucky to be a part of that and hear about their different journeys and how they knew each other. And, she was telling me all of these stories from, back in the day, and how they knew each other and all this drama that was happening. And I was sitting there with my momos thinking, this sounds exactly like my friends today. So that's how the title came up with. It's The Way We Are, because of course there are many things that have changed over time, and there's many things that we can learn from people older than us. But at the same time, there are also a lot of things that, don't change and are evergreen, or that are so similar in between different generations, that I think we can also all learn from each other and reflect on our experiences there too. So it was a huge learning experience for me. I would say, like, changed my life meeting these women. Like, they're the most lovely women you'll ever meet, who opened their homes and their hearts to me. And I have to say, they're like, inspirational, like, mentors to me, to how to lead your life.
I could really feel that closeness in the film, especially in your use of like archival. Some of those, the photographs and the footage seem incredibly personal. And what struck me, looking at these images, is hearing also narration about how there wasn't this history, there wasn't this story for the women themselves. That at one point, I think somebody talked about going to a library and looking up the word homosexual, and that was sort of their only entry into their identity as an Asian queer woman. And so, my question is, what was it like, um, holding these histories and sort of in a way creating this archive, and whether, was there something that things that you weren't able to include in the film because there wasn't that sort of archival footage available?
Yeah, so all of the archival footage that you see in the film are from the four women themselves. Some of them were even old films that Tamai had made back in the day, because she's also a filmmaker. And so I think whenever we talk about archival, we also think about the material that is available, that still it has lasted to this point for us to be able to use. So I think that, with Super 8, a lot of people, don't have these videos of themselves when they were kids. They don't have photos that they've kept from themselves. So, finding people to be able to tell their story, but who also, had this material, was also something that was hard for me to kind of draw the line between, because to tell the story, I knew that I needed material, but I also didn't want to take away from the fact that, oh, you don't have Super 8, like your stories are not, I still wanted to tell those stories. So so some of the women had more photos than others, and it all turned out to be okay in the end, because it's only 15 minutes and I had to sort of cut it down. And actually they weren't narration, they were actually interviews. So which with each woman, I went to their house and interviewed them for like a good 2-3 hours. There's audio interviews and transcripts of like 50 pages from like each woman. So to also have to cut down their story and like cut it down to 15 minutes was also a very difficult thing to do. And I think how I managed to get through it was, think about what was most important to them personally, each one of them, and try to get that point across. And I hope I did them justice, and they seem to have really liked it. So I guess that was, anyway, so that's just kind of the challenge too, right? With archival, is having to pick and choose things to go into a moment. And outside of this film, there are also tons and tons of material. Like Tamai had so much material of these conferences that she went to, these lesbian magazines, like all these sort of like community organizing and programs and posters that I felt were so important to scan and digitize. So it was a lot of time spending hours scanning and digitizing, but only maybe about 1/10 or like maybe about like 1/10 of the material actually made it into the film, maybe even less. So there's so much stuff, so much very, very rich stuff in our stories. And I guess I know I've been talking a lot, so I'm just going to end it here. But if you're out there and you're thinking like you have photographs and things like that you might not think are important to people to know, like your stories are really important, no matter how mundane you think they are important to somebody, and they're going to move somebody. And I was crying throughout the edit. So if these stories moved you, I'm sure that your stories will also move other people. So don't be afraid to share them with others. And it's all about community. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now, but thank you.
No, that was perfectly actually on time. And what a beautiful way to like end this portion. The idea that our stories are important, the idea that Asian stories are important, especially Asian queer histories and stories are important. And now everybody who's watching the Q&A know who to contact if they do have something that they would like to, be memorialized, and maybe it might end up in Amanda's next film. I shouldn't be promising anything on your behalf, so I'm gonna stop there. But thank you so much for talking with us, Amanda, and we
Of
will
course.
see you at the end.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And so now we will be speaking with the filmmaker of In the Shadow of the Pines, Anne Kozumi. It's another simply stunning film about our personal family histories, about things that we know now that we wish we knew then. And I'm going to stop talking about it because Anne is here, and I would much rather hear Anne talk about it.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks
How does
for.
it feel?
How does it feel?
How does it feel knowing that this story is out there now, and that everyone has a chance to view it and to hear something that is so personal to you and your family?
Well, right now I'm feeling like a little nervous, but I'm good. But now that, now that the film is out there, it feels good. Like I was kind of talking about this earlier, but when I was making the film, it was a really lonely process, especially with animation. I'm making all the sets, I'm making the props. I did have help from a friend to help animate it, but for the most part, it's a very solitary process. And mind you, I don't mind that kind of work. I'm actually quite introverted, and I like doing things on my own. But there is for sure a loneliness in terms of what I was experiencing. But now that the film is out there, and I've had just such an incredible response from audience members, and especially from first and second generation Canadians, the story has really resonated with them, and I feel less alone. Like to know that this experience is really a shared experience, and a lot of people could relate to what I had gone through.
That definitely also resonates with me. When my parents first immigrated, I'm first generation, they were working at gas stations or in factories. And sort of, what was so beautiful about your film is that there was sort of this like dual layer happening, that at the in you were describing in one way your childlike perspective of of your father and the events in his life, and then there was a sort of a second layer of you now as an adult, finding a type of understanding, and that is a theme that actually I think is embedded through many of the films in the side by side programming.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people would love to know, like, what was that process of, I guess, turning that into art, about representing it in like a visual form?
Well, I sometimes say that making the film, which took me almost 4 years, was just like one big long therapy session because, it's like it's like art therapy, it's role playing, it's like, self-discovery, all of those things that are, I think, healthy in terms of like the healing process. But yeah, when I started making the film, I was still grieving. My father had passed away 8 years ago. But I was still thinking a lot about him, and I obviously still think a lot about him now. But and on top of that, I was carrying a lot of shame and regret, and so I think making this project was really about figuring out, okay, well, how is it that I'm going to reconcile this relationship with him now that he's gone, and in order to do so, I wanted to find out more about him. My father never spoke about his past. He never spoke about his life prior to immigrating to Canada. He barely spoke about his life when he, the life that I know of my father is the life that I lived with him. And most of that was him working. And you know, when I was writing his eulogy for his funeral, and I was you know, trying to collect some stories about him, you know, so many of those stories were about him working, and I just thought, wow, I just can't believe how little I know about my father, and also just how much he did for me. And I think yeah, I just felt like I needed to know more. So yeah, I started doing some research, and I shot a lot of interviews, and I talked a lot to my family members and to his brothers and his friends, and even people he grew up with at the orphanage. So yeah, I think, you know, discovering those stories was really about, you know, filling the gaps in not just his identity, but in my own identity, and then just kind of putting the pieces together. So yeah.
Feel free to tell me if this question is too personal. But I remember one line that just stood out so starkly for me is there was a scene where I remember you said, I never actually had this conversation with my father. And obviously silence and reticence is something that I think is talked about a lot across Asian families. And so I was just wondering, do you feel closer to your father now that you've undergone this process of like really diving into who he was as a full person, you know, even maybe aside from just being the parent?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely felt that, you know, uh, understanding him, his past, you know, better understanding his story, better understanding his upbringing allowed me to get to know him. You know, it's just too bad that I did this after he passed away. But yeah, you know, that one line, it was important for me to put that in the film for many reasons. You know, I wanted the audience to know that I constructed the conversation with him, that, you know, this is a conversation that I didn't have with my father, but even if he were still alive, I don't think I could have with him. It's not like, because, you know, if he were alive that he would tell me those stories. I just don't think it was in his character to tell me those things. And another, you know, and then another reason for putting the line in is really just telling people that I never got a chance to tell him that I was sorry, to tell him that I learned all of these things about him after he passed away. So yeah, like yeah, I'm glad you noticed that, you know, because yeah, I think all of those points are important in terms of my relationship with him.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really resonated with that. I won't go too much into my personal relationships, but that's definitely something I very much resonated with. So, to a topic that's, I guess, more craft related, one of the other things that was so special about your film was that it incorporated so many different forms. There was, I think, collage work. There was archival material. There was also, you know, claymation and animation. And for me, what I noticed, you know, after watching it is that certain parts are very specifically this form and other parts are very specifically that form. And I was just wondering if you could talk more about sort of your creative decision making in terms of putting together all these different forms and having them represent like the stage of the story that, you know, you wanted them to represent.
Yeah, well, in terms of craft, I've been making animations for about 15 years, you know, just independent productions. I'm a self-taught animator. And yeah, in terms of stop motion, it made sense for me just because I've been working with it for so long. But in terms of the story, it also, you know, it just seemed like the perfect form because, you know, I'm revisiting childhood. I'm talking about my past, and my memories as a kid. And, you know, when you think about childhood, you think about plasticine, you think about puppets and miniatures. And so I think the form really, you know, just fit the story in that sense. But for the archives, you know, that came in later on. I didn't know I was going to use them, but I got them when I was doing my research in Japan. And the archival footage actually comes from the orphanage where my father was raised.
Wow.
Because it was actually operated by American missionaries, and the American missionaries made a film about the work that they were doing in Japan in 1949, actually. And so that film, it's a 45-minute film about this orphanage. My dad was actually living there at that time. So when I was kind of going through this footage, I would kind of pause it on certain images and go, is that my dad? Like he would have been 6 or 7 years old at the time the film was made. So anyway, I was able to get my hands on this footage through my cousin who lived in the same city where the orphanage is. And anyway, so with this footage, I thought I have to use some of this in telling my father's story, because, you know, this is really part of his story. So so that's kind of where the archival footage comes in. And then the paper cutout, that really came at the end. And I was just trying to find certain ways of telling, just telling the part of my story about my own shame. And again, it made sense in regards to the representation of Japanese men. And I actually got 80s and 90s magazines, Japanese men's magazines. Wow. Yeah. And, you know, used those cutouts and then used my family photos. So, yeah.
So we're running out of time a little bit, but I just want to squeeze in some comments from the audience. So number one, somebody says, Anne, your father's character was very much like mine. Perhaps they are both comparing notes somewhere in the cosmos. So beautiful. That
is so beautiful. Oh, thank you.
And then just because I'm going to slip in a quick question. Somebody asked why the audience do the audience end up hearing your father's apology instead of your specific apology, since the film was about your remorse?
I see the entire film as kind of my apology, as my way of acknowledging, you know, the work that my father has done. I don't know if it needed to come out verbally, but in terms of my father's apology, that's something that I just needed to hear. So yeah, I think I think that's the only way that I could explain it. Yeah.
Going back to the thought of art therapy and reconciliation, that I think, you know, is just two themes that are so throughout this film.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you so much for sharing with us today. And we look forward to speaking with you again at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So next up, we have, and this is a film that I had seen from the very first time it was submitted. And I'm so excited to be talking with Soon-Hee Kim, who is the filmmaker of the incredible animated short Tiger and Ox.
Hi.
Hi, Soon-Hee. How are you?
Hello. Good. Thank you for having me today.
I'm so glad you're here. I want to tell you how big of a fan I am. As soon as I watched Tiger and Ox, I immediately looked up your other short films, and I did a bit of a social media stalking on you. So, you know, we'll just leave it at that, you know. And but I think, you know, the first thing that I think everybody wants to know after watching your film is, have your mother seen it, and what are her thoughts about the film?
Okay, but before that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, whenever I make film, I always show my film to my mom first, and that time she always like gives me some comment. Well, people will like it, or I think you're gonna be so, or something like that, and that kind of, you know, that cheers me up. But this time, when she saw the film, she just said only one sentence, "Good work," and then just walked out of the room. So I thought, she didn't like it. Maybe this time the festival run can be failed like that. People would not like it like that. Kind of obviously discouraged me a lot.
Oh no, did you feel that has her reaction changed since that moment?
But I kind of realized that time she was hiding her emotions that time, because recently we visited a Korean local film festival in person, and that was her very first time to visit a film festival and watch my film on a big screen. And this time the film is about like just her whole life, and then the whole life she doesn't want to go back, especially the past. I think, yeah, the film can be like a time machine to her. That you brought up to, I'm sorry, there's my dog whining kind of here. uh, anyway, that time she told me that she was holding in tears all the time watching the films. So I think like when she watched for the first time, that time she was just hiding her emotion that time, I guess.
I would love to know sort of what inspired the film. Like, was it always in your mind that you wanted to create this film based on your relationship with your mom, or was this something that that sort of came up more recently?
Oh, yeah, I have whole this like subject where this is about us like all the time since I got into an AR school when I was in 20s. That but that time like I was too emotional when it comes to our relationship. I wanted to be more rational, and I wanted to see our relationship more like in social context, not just personal. But that time when I was in 20, that I was too young, I got easily emotional, and then I think that time I was not enough to deal with this. And then these days it's kind of like I feel like I'm having some kind of like closure in my life, because everybody has like just some moment to have the closure in their life in like sometimes, and then that's like right now to me. And then that's why I start to work on this and then made this.
I remember that there's a line in the film where you talk about how you really didn't like your mother when you were younger, but then now that you are in your 30s and realize that you are around the same age as your mother was in the story, now you sort of understand more of her reasoning and the way that, um, why she reacted the way that she did, towards you and towards society in a way. Would you say that this film, the process of making this film, was healing for you in some way? And did it sort of change your relationship?
It was completely opposite, honestly. It was not healing at all. It was actually torturing to me.
I love it.
I think audience and you may sense like our relationship is not like healthy, honestly. And yeah, I had to also go through all the things we had in the past, and I had to remember this over and over again. So and to be rational while making the film, I also need to be like detached from my mom, like physically and emotionally as well. So while I was making this film, I've never talked to my mom. It was really hard, honestly, to talk to her. And yeah, also I need to take some therapy sessions as well. I need to take some medication seriously. It was really, really hard. And yeah, yeah, simply it's just completely opposite, not healing at all.
I can 100% relate,
Oh,
most 80% of the reason why I'm in therapy, my relationship with my parents. I just want to put in a comment that we got from the chat, which says, "Thanks, Soonhee, for your wonderful mother-daughter story. Such a tribute to the power and strength of independent women."
thank you.
So congratulations for representing in this way. And around that, I want to talk about another line in the movie where you talked about going to a film festival in the UK and
Yes.
the film having and your relation with your mom having a very different like response from the other filmmakers. Now that you have toured the film around both in Korea and also outside of Korea, um, how has the response been to the film that's different, like in Korea versus outside of Korea?
I think almost all the same, like regardless the reason. And plus, because of the pandemic, even if the film screens in other countries as well, it's I didn't have any chance to see like international audience reaction or response. But I think because even like among Korean audience, I think they can be divided into like the ones who know and empathize, and the ones who never recognize there is stigma or discrimination. And I think like all the same in the world, like because honestly, like people cannot be related to some like social stigma or social matter if they're not involved there. So I mean, so like audience can be just divided into like all everywhere. I guess that's what I guess.
Thank you so much for speaking to us about your film.
No,
I
thank
look
you.
forward to speaking with you more at the end when we have everybody back. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
And,
thank you.
a
Thank
wonderful
you for having
conversation.
me.
Okay, so we're at the last of our filmmakers before we have a huge party. And so I'm so excited to introduce our last filmmaker, Tiffany Hyun, who made the film Sing Me a Lullaby, and basically one of my favorite films, I think of 2018, The Apology. Tiffany is here with her mom, Wendy Tang, and I can't express how excited I am to speak with you both. The Apology really, it like changed my life, and it revealed a part of Asian women history that I'd never seen before. And now in this short film, there's another history, and it's a very personal one. The story of basically you and your mom finding your birth grandmother. And I think everybody wants to know, Wendy, what were your thoughts when you finally watched the film? And also, what were your thoughts when Tiffany came to you and said that she wanted to make a film about this?
Wow. Gosh, this was how many years ago then?
That was 15 years ago.
15 years ago. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, 2004, I think was.
Yes,
2005, yeah.
something like that. I entertained the idea, thinking it was, that moment, this university film student just want an excuse to travel abroad to Taiwan, with her friends, and then it'll be a great excuse to use to say, "Hey, mom, I'm gonna look for your your birth parents." So the truth was, I didn't take it very seriously. I did not think it would actually happen. That's why, a lot of time when she called from overseas, my first reaction was, "Are you okay? Are you in trouble?" Or some, stuff like that. And I think that's it's a very natural reaction from parents. So I am very proud, extremely proud, and shocked, of course, to say the least. It actually got finished. I mean, mind you, you would have been done, completed earlier. However, because of the apology, I totally understand. So there was, overlapping of the two. But she had always reassured me during this whole process. She said, "Mom, trust me, I'm gonna finish this film." So secretly, I was watching, to see when is it actually going to be done. I knew she took over hundreds and hundreds hours of footages, but I just thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be so hard to go through all the footages that she took before. And she, of course, over the years, she has some pickup shots of just like mapping things together. Like it's crazy. Even just before she put everything through before she submitted it, it was just amazing to see it actually get done.
Yes, seeing a few times, and I think that
I think that's the most shocking part. But of course, it was beautifully. I mean, she did a great job. However, it's in such a short 30 minutes. It's hard to tell one's life. Of course, there are many things that took place, but it's impressive that. To condense that and still try to make sense of the beginning, the middle, and the end of it. That I think it really takes some strength and perseverance, determination, because I would have given up a long time ago.
I'm so glad you mentioned the apology, because I don't think I could have finished Sing Me a Lullaby if I didn't make the apology, but I also don't think I could have started making the apology if I didn't initially go on this search when I was 21 years old to find my grandmother, and actually understand the legacy of the women that have come before me, how incredibly strong they are. My mom's adopted mother, Popo, I have a very close relationship with her. And then meeting my biological grandmother, and to understand the weight of how secrets and why people keep secrets and why people don't talk about these things, and all the things that I thought, at the age of 21, believing that, this was all nonsense. Everyone needs to know everything. I was like, this is stupid. I was a very rebellious.
She still tells me, speak your mind, don't hide things. Tell me what's on your mind. But as you probably know, it's such a typical thing for Asian families, especially the relationship between parents and children. There's a unspoken line, invisible line. It's there, yet you know when you cross it or not, when to cross it and when not to cross it. But in our family, it's often crossed. So meaning sometimes
we have a filmmaker as a daughter, so I mean, it was a matter of time.
I'm the daughter. Here's my mom telling me.
Well, I mean, number one, I want to say I was very impressed, Tiffany, with your Mandarin skills. 我的普通话也不是非常好，所以我听了你在说普通话, and being able to find the people that you needed to find with broken Mandarin was incredible. The other thing
did you see that scene where I said to my grandmother when I first met her that I brought her a husband because I was trying to remember, and it was husband 丈夫我有一个丈夫给你 and I was like, wait, that's not how you say it.
Well, trust me, her Mandarin has improved so much over the years, and thanks to the apology, because she had a lot of practices with some of the grandmothers in China and Taiwan. So thanks to that.
Yeah, like I said, I couldn't have, one film couldn't have been made without the other. And I think that as much as I had kept on promising and reassuring my mother that I would finish it, I'm so glad it took the time that it did. I don't think I was ready to make Sing Me a Lullaby back when I was in my 20s. I'm so glad that I learned the lessons from the grandmothers in Korea, in the Philippines, and in China. I'm so glad I got mentored and got to work with some incredible filmmakers to make the apology, with Anita, with Mary, with all of the people that I got to collaborate with. So I feel like I was very fortunate to go through this incredible master's boot camp making the apology to now hone the skills to make Sing Me a Lullaby, which again, it's in a collaboration with so many talented filmmakers and storytellers and
very patient people.
I joke with Xi Feng and Ricardo Acosta. Editors are your therapists, man. They are for a documentary, you go through a bit of a therapy session with them throughout the years that you try to craft that story. So I feel very blessed that I got to learn lessons that I was able to learn from the apology, and I continue to learn. I learned from making Sing Me a Lullaby, and who knows, maybe the next film won't take over a decade. I don't know, but I'm also really into that too. It's okay.
I'm gonna make sure I live to 100 to watch it.
I just want to slip in a beautiful comment to both of you from one of the people watching this Q&A, and they said, "What an incredible life's work, accumulating in an incredible, poignant film. Thanks, Tiffany, for your persistence, and Wendy for laying out your vulnerability. How beautiful the story is. I watched it with my mom. So many tears for me. Asian parent-daughter / child relationships are so complicated. It was so well represented. Kudos and congratulations to you both."
Thank you.
And we're almost out of time, but I really want to slip in this question, which I'm gonna get. I think Kelly's gonna come after me. Is Wendy? You revealed that the editing process was very long and very difficult, and I'm sure all the people watching this want to know: was there something in there that got left out? That you wish remained in? What was a moment that that you kind of wish had, both Wendy and Tiffany would have made it into the final cut of this film?
Well, you could tell them you were so upset with me when I took it out. She just looked at me and she just shook her head.
About cinematography point of view, because there were some beautiful shots. There were some, I feel like at the same time, I would take people, the audience, on a tour of Taiwan, because it is my birthplace. It's a beautiful island, even though it's tiny. It's just very charming. So when she chopped up all those the scenes, like when we were praying at the temples, in Taiwan, I just thought, oh my God! And it was during Chinese New Year. How often do you get to see the celebration at its, the uncut format, like tons of people, it was such a sight to witness. That, and of course, gosh, there's a few, and then like us eating at the street corners or the street vendors, because that really reminds me of when I was a young girl, a student with not much money. With a few dollars, you could get a bowl of yangchun mian, like a simple noodle.
Yes, yes.
If you get an extra dollar or cents, then they'll throw you ludan, like an egg. Those the brownish cooked egg in the noodle soup. So
Yeah.
We actually had that. She filmed. I mean, it was in the original cut before they decided to take it out. So
Tiffany, you need to release a travel
I know.
series featuring your mom.
What's exciting is I know my mom, like there was like moments she definitely was like, oh, why would you do that? But I'm just excited how excited people are from watching the short, because the plan is, and always been a dream of mine, is to script this based on this true story. So I'm working on a feature that's based off of the story, because I have this fascination and obsession of how was 1960s Taiwan for my 5-year-old mother and for my grandmother. I want to see it. Like I want to visualize it. And I think that that's always been kind of, one of these days I want to be able to build out the scenes, build out the memories that my mother has, and put it out on a set. So that's to come, hopefully, again, not in a decade.
What a beautiful way to end this particular session. But I think we're going to still have you on, because I think we're going to bring all the filmmakers in. And I'm so excited to actually hear all of you together, this wonderful room of Asian women, number one. and number two, I think so many of the films work very well together and have similar storylines. And so I'm just going to see when Real Asian is going to pop everyone in. It's party time. Yes. So, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming back. Um, I'm so excited we have time for this because I think so many of your films. I mean, I'm hoping you all got a chance to watch the entire program. Work so well alongside each other, and there's just so many through lines coming through. There's so many questions I want to ask, but first, how I want to start is a big theme in a lot of the films is the idea of family, specific Asian familial relationships. Obviously, there we all come from different parts of Asia, and often, like I think people, put all these different identities together into one. But there, interestingly, is certain I think qualities that I think um, we all sort of talk about, whether there's like a reticence between us and our relationship with our parents or things that we know and don't know. And, I would just love to hear if there is one thing that, you want or stereotype about Asian familial relationships that you want to like correct or you want to speak about or complicate, what would that be?
Mm. Express your feelings.
Hmm?
Okay. Express your feelings when you
I think one of the stereotypes that I've been seeing recently, well, I shouldn't say it's totally prevalent throughout the media, but I can't help but think that as a Japanese immigrant, I think people think or even a lot of immigrants from East Asia, there's this idea that there's a lot of wealth, that there's just like, we're rich and we're like buying designer handbags and, and I think for sure there's a part of me that wants to fall into that and just says, yeah, I want to latch onto that stereotype because yeah, I want to disguise myself as living that way. But part of making this film was just coming out with it and saying like I wasn't rich, and I just want you to know that not all Asians are rich, or they're it's like and they don't. Yeah, and I think that's just something that I would. Yeah, that's definitely a stereotype that I just want to kind of crush and just say there's just so yeah, we all come from different socioeconomic backgrounds and yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny because as you were saying that, I was thinking about all the things that like, I'm like, have I ever taken advantage of a stereotype? Like people thinking that I was good at math and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. But I'm actually horrible in math, but I'm like, yeah, if you want to think I'm good at math or, I'll just jump on that just so like, my homework doesn't get double questioned or anything like that. I remember doing that in high school, like getting away with things because people just thought I was studious because of this Asian stereotype that, the studious, will just do all her homework. And if I came up with an excuse, it must be like, something legitimate. Exactly. That I just totally outed myself to all my high school students right there and then. But I think one of the stereotypes that or just something that I grew up with, and maybe that's probably why I gave you so much grief growing up, was wanting to go against this, like, not speaking my mind and needing to say everything and being so frustrated by the fact that no one was saying anything. And it was just like this, like, just everyone just swallowed everything, everyone just swallowed the bitter and just kind of went on with it. And I, for the longest time, and got a lot of trouble for doing it, I think, was to just go against it, speak up and say things, even though it may have done some harm by doing it too aggressively sometimes. But I think I felt like I had to do it even more so. And I carried that in university and film school when I was like one of like 6 people of color, in the program. And I was like, I have to be extra loud because if I don't say anything, then I'm just following under some guise of a stereotype of just being quiet and timid and all this stuff. So I felt like I just had to be more of. I think, since university and the experience and lessons I've learned, I've kind of like, I feel like I've calmed down a bit. Don't you think?
She's very loud.
I love that simple way of putting it. Tiffany is very loud now. I was also wondering, Soon-hee, you are in a room of like Asian diaspora artists, and you do live in Korea, and so as a Korean filmmaker, and sort of and also going to different film festivals, how does it feel to kind of have your identity sort of condensed in a way when you leave your country? And do you find that that's the case?
Okay. That's a huge question. I'm sorry, my microphone was off. Oh, I mean, I've experienced a lot, but it's kind of hard to like, speak up right now, like in an arranged manner. What can I say? Oh,
If you need, oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, okay. But whenever I visit a film festival in other countries, the first thing and most of the things that I encounter is people don't perceive me as filmmaker. Even if I'm invited there, I'm just Asian woman. Sometimes I even heard like from a male filmmaker that you should get married. You should get married to a white guy like that. Yeah, I know. It's horrible. Like I haven't heard such things like that. I know it's yeah. So like, can I say like whenever I to go through such things like that in other countries, I always just like make myself just believe that you have to fight for it. Just don't be collapsed just by hearing such stuff. Even if I'm staying in Korea, I can see all the like film festival selection results as well. Like I can see just less Asian films than like other like American films or European films at that time. Okay, just as long as I just survive for long, then that's just fighting as well. So that's like how I think that's like my stance for that. Hope it makes sense.
Thank you so much for that. I think we all relate to that on a lot of levels. Amanda, I really want to hear from you, but before I do, I want to give you a compliment. There's a comment from chat and they say, "Thanks, Amanda, for putting together a film to highlight Asian gay culture and historical struggles. So cool to know that a lot existed back then." And now I would love to come to you and, are there certain experiences that you have that's linked to your identity as an Asian filmmaker, or feel free to respond to that lovely, lovely comment about the importance of your work.
Thank you, whoever made that comment. It's interesting because it reads like a lot existed back then, but it's also a lot, like Asian lesbians of Toronto existed back then.
Oh my God.
But it's also a lot that existed back then. I actually wanted to respond to the family question, if that's okay. I was just thinking about family and I guess community too, if like, that's your chosen family. And I think that there's this stereotype that Asians are not very good at communicating their feelings or something like that. And I do think that something that I've learned is that, I've always, when I was younger, I would say, why doesn't anyone listen to me? But then I realized that I was not listening to anybody else. So I think something that I wanted to kind of remember now when I'm approaching, my family or, someone who may have reticence of of speaking is that sometimes listening and is just as good as talking. And so not necessarily just because someone doesn't speak very much that they're not communicating, but that we all just communicate in different ways. And I think that that's really important to remember in like a community sense. And I think that Asian folks, at least, you know, the ones that I interact with are actually really great at communicating. So something to remember about about that stereotype too. Yeah, that's what I want to say about that. About stereotypes.
Thank you so much, Amanda. We are running out of time, but I really want to squeeze in this question from the audience. They asked, and this is a you know, touchy one. Have your families always been supportive of you being a filmmaker? And we have actually, you know, the mother of a filmmaker right here, and you know, I would love to. I mean, as an Asian artist myself, I mean, the answer for me is no. So I would love to hear for all of you, you know, whether your parents are supportive of your careers as filmmakers.
Well, I'm very, very fortunate. Both my mother and father have been quite supportive, and I don't know if it's because I was stubborn. You know, like I don't. Sometimes now when I look back on it, just like what you said, Amanda, sometimes I'm like, was I just extra loud and I wasn't even hearing what people were reacting to? Like when my mom was like, "Yeah, right, you're gonna go to Taiwan," like totally not being really into it or didn't believe it. Like I just continued just moving and doing because maybe I was really loud because I was too scared to hear the response of people. And I think that's the same way, like coming out as well. Like I came out at the age of 17 and not by my choice because my sister outed me, but that's another story. She outed me to my mother, but that's fine. She calls it ripping off the Band-Aid, and that's cool because my mom is like my biggest like supporter, and she like I think 2 prides ago came to the first Dyke March, and that was amazing. You know, that's another story. I think that I feel like I've been very, very blessed to have parents that love the arts and didn't get to do it themselves. My mom and dad met in theater in Toronto in a community theater in Chinatown. I don't know what it was called back then, Mom.
I do want to point out Wendy's face right now.
Why don't you can answer to that? I think when you found out that I want to be in film, were you like, oh my God, I have to support her for the rest of my life? You did?
Well, actually, it's, you know what they said. Well, actually, you told me this. Do what you're passionate about, then the money will come. So I'm patiently waiting, watching you pursuing your passion, your dream, and hopefully the money will roll in later. I'm just kidding.
Sorry, the this has kicked in now at this age. It's okay, Mom. It's okay. Whatever happened, but yes, I am glad. Yes, I am passionate when I do, and I am happy that I get to do what I do and be able to share it with the world. So I don't know if that really answered it, but sure.
No, an incredible answer. Yoonhee, Amanda, Anne, you know, what about your parents, especially because they feature in your work, and obviously Amanda, you have elders you really look up to, you know, many of whom granted are artists themselves, so I would assume that they understand. You know.
Yeah, well, I'm, you know, I'm the youngest of 4 children, and my oldest sister is 7 years older than me, and I think she probably endured the most in terms of my parents and expectations. So I think by the time I came around, they, you know, I didn't have to go to Japanese school. I didn't have to take piano lessons. Like, you know, they kind of just got so busy that they were like, it's okay. We'll just let Anne, you know, do what she wants to do. but, you know, in terms of it, like, you know, my dad just like wanted me to be a teacher, or like, he really thought I was going to be like a high school teacher or something. I think they just wanted me to do something that was like stable and secure. So I never told them that I was going to go to film school, and I really didn't tell them that I was even applying to go to film school until I made my first film, and then I showed it to them and said, this is what I want to do, and then they were really supportive of me. You know, I don't think they really thought like she's going to make a career out of this, and for sure, like I still have my own doubts about that. So, you know, but yeah, like even with my dad. Yeah, like I can think about like when I got into like a really prestigious grad school in the States, I never went, but you know, the tuition was like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he offered to put a second mortgage on the house so that I could go. And I was just like, I cannot do that. And so I just, you know, when I think about it, he never like right out said, yes, this is what I want you to do. But he just showed me, and so, you know, he showed me through his actions that he supported me. So yeah.
Wow. So just absolutely beautiful to hear so far, some amazing stories of, and you know, sorry, Amanda, Soon-Hee, did you have similar experiences in terms of having that conversation with your parents?
Sure, I'll go first unless you want to go first, Soon. Oh, okay. I'll go first. Okay. This online format is a little odd, but my parents were not happy when I wanted to go to film school. I also I went to Ryerson. I think you went to Ryerson too, Tiffany. Yeah. So I got into Ryerson, but at the same time, I also got into U of T and some other schools that my parents thought were way better than going to Ryerson for film. But I really wanted to go to film school. And I remember this conversation that my dad actually had with me where he said, you know, he and my mom were not happy about it, but he had a chat with his friend where he was talking to his friend about how, so he asked his friend, hey, how do you like steer your children into the right career direction without, you know, forcing them into it? And his friend said, hey, you don't. You just let them do what they want, because at the end of the day, it's going to be all right. So you just have to trust that they know what they're doing. So then he came back to me and he had this conversation with me and he said, you know what? I'm going to listen to my friend, and I trust that, you know, we were good parents to you and that you know what you're doing. So so I went to film school, and they moaned and grimaced for the whole time that I was there, especially my mom. My dad was more chill about it. But and then after I graduated, my mom said, okay, now you're going to go to law school or medical school or something, right? And I was like, no, I'm going to work in the industry and break my back on set. And my dad has often seen me like carry gear out to the car. And he has said like, oh, this seems like, you know, not a job for a woman, or, you know, something kind of sexist like that. But all in all, they have been, although they say these things, they have been quite supportive. And actually, I have another film called An Object of Merit, which is about a Korean Canadian potter. And when that came out, my mom actually shared it on her Facebook, and she was like, "Look, my daughter is in this festival." So I know that they care about me in that way. But with this film, I'm not out to my parents. I'm out to my brother, but I'm not out to my parents. So they actually haven't seen this film. And I did in the credits write that this film is for my family. So I hope that one day they can see it. But I know that they'll support me regardless. So it's just not the time yet. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Amanda, for sharing that. And I also hope that they see it, because it's a beautiful, wonderful, important film. And I think everybody who's seen it, all agree that it's just such an incredible piece of work.
Thank you, Angela.
Then it's my turn to share my story. My mom is not, I mean, she was not supportive at all. I think that time, like when I just got into art school, that time she kind of fantasized about being an artist, like some kind of celebrity. So, but once she realized that making it big as an artist, it's a lot like winning a lottery, and then she kind of like gave up about it. And not only that, like when I was in like almost the last semester of the art school, that time there was kind of big family crisis and I had to drop out the school. Then also like kind of like dark story there, deep story, but like that time I wanted to really, I was kind of suicidal. Then okay, before I die, then how about just trying at least once, like what I want in my life? And then I start to make film. And then even that time, she didn't believe that my film can get into film festivals. And then the first film finally got quite good result. And then she just, can I say, just approved me to do what I want. I guess that's my story.
Wow. Thank you, Soon-hee, for your
Yeah.
vulnerability.
Pleasure.
You know what? You know what's this theme that's been, I know that we're definitely over time, so thank you everybody so much for staying. But I just wanted to end off by saying, oh, an interesting thread that I've heard in almost everybody's Q&As is a mention of therapy. And as someone who identifies as, you know, a mad artist, an artist with a mental health disability, praise be to therapy. And I feel like this session has been almost like a therapeutic process on me as well as an Asian woman artist. And so I just want to genuinely thank every single person: Tiffany, Wendy, Soon-hee, Amanda, Anne. Thank you to Jamie, our ASL interpreter, who's been so fantastic with all my interruptions. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, the entire Real Asian team, for staying behind so that we could really talk. And now there's, you know, the wine is coming out, so that we could end in such a beautiful way. My empty water glass.
Cheers to everybody.
Oh, hi. Hi. I know. So yeah, we know
You
each
know
other.
each other? Of course.
Lovely to see you.
Hi,
So yes,
This is hilarious.
thank you for joining us. And so I just want to give a big cheers to everybody. And we're going to have Kelly back to just end things off. But I just want to have a genuine thanks to everybody here today. I learned so much from your films, from you as artists, from this Q&A. And there's such important work being done right here, right now, by all of us. And thank you so much for staying with us to talk about it.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm ready to say thank you again. But you know, this is the last live Q&A session for the Shorts program here at Real Asian, and I'm just truly so blessed to have you all be here with us. It was such a tender Q&A session, and I think they're all such important films that I just really, again, cannot express how much it means, not just for myself, but for everyone else who has been part of this festival and have watched your films. Angela, thank you. You've been such a big part of this festival, so thank you so much for being here today. Jamie, you're staying overtime. Thank you. You're Real Asian family. We love you. And Mimi and Joe, they're our amazing digital producers. Chris, our staff mod for tonight, thank you so much. And obviously all of our amazing audience members who are tuning in at this point of time. So Real Asian does end tomorrow, but there's still time to get tickets for the Code of Conduct panel and the closing night live script read of Scarborough. You can find out more information on our website at realasian.com. And on that note, folks, please take care and stay safe. And I guess farewell for now. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to hug you all.
Thank you.